Now, I'm going to introduce the co-editors who did most of the editing. I never edit. I like the raw history to come through. I like us to see all the mistakes and stylistic diversions as part of history. But those two ladies over there are oriented toward cutting. And they did a job that makes the volume much more readable and more accessible to all. This is the next speaker I'm going to call upon is our one of our editors, Kathy Catrambone. Kathy has been very active in journalism circles in Chicago for the last X number of years. And she did very good work, and she wrote one of the articles. She brought in several of the writers who appear in the volume. And I'll have Kathy, what do you think we should do with volume 2?
Okay.
Please. Yeah, well, ask speakers to please take the podium. Please take the podium because the microphone is there, and that's the only thing that will go out over the Zoom.
Okay, good. You can hear me. Well, first of all, we have to thank Dominic for having the vision to do the first book. It was a milestone in that there were stories in the book that were never told before. I'd say practically the whole book. And so that in and of itself is important. The situation with that was that a lot of people wrote about their personal experiences, which is great, but they're not writers. And so as editors, we had to really tread lightly because Gloria's nodding.
They got.
Yeah, because they're writing about their beloved grandmother, and there's only so many times in an essay you could call her beloved grandmother. So, you know, it was that kind of just getting them to focus on what they wanted to say. There were other writers in the book who were more experienced, and we didn't have that problem. You always have to cut, no matter what it is. If I had any complaint about the book, it was too much, I think. That if there is a second one, I would propose that we have fewer essays, but much better. And then they can be a little longer. The photos can be larger. There was just, you know, we were constantly putting 10 pounds of potato into a 5-pound sack. And I worked on newspapers, you know, and that's, I mean, I'm just used to that, you know, but in the newsroom, I would say, oh my God, it's like me trying to fit into my jeans. There's not enough room. Yeah. So I'm used to that, but the people being edited weren't necessarily used to that. And I mean, I wrote a letter to a business last night, and I sent it to my cousin who has a master's in business communication, and she edited for me this morning. I mean, you know, you have to at some point step away from what you write. So one thing I would do differently would be to talk to all the writers before they start writing and look at what is it that we want to communicate. I think we've done really well in the first book with the immigration story, and I think we need to take, there was one story I think set in the 50s in the book, 50s or 60s. So I would like to take it further. And we had Florence Scala, and her work was in the early 60s. But I think we need to now advance, advance the story, advance women's experiences, and, you know, maybe even get another generation in, you know, second and third generation born here. You know, like Dominic said, in journalism, I mean, since 1973, when I graduated college, and in the 90s, I was still being discriminated against in job interviews.
Imagine that.
And this one editor of a big publication in Chicago asked me about my management style, and because I told him, and he goes, "Wow, that's great, but if that doesn't work, you could always." This was during a job interview. I was stunned, you know. So the public has a misconception of Italians. There's some controversy about the 50th anniversary of The Godfather. And so I would just like us to show the real complete story of Italian American women and advancing it.
Good.
Thank you very much, Kathy. That was a great insider